Moonrise. Chapter 5. Invitations. High school went back to normal within a few weeks for us. Edward was now steering clear of the human girl, Isabella, in order for my visions not to come true. He was doing everything correctly now. He was no longer ditching class, or just not going to school. He had stayed in Forks for our sakes, knowing that we would all be upset if he left. But he was upset with staying here. It was taking a huge toll on him, and Jasper and I knew it better than anyone. His hunting pattern went back to normal, only hunting when we hunted. He always listened in on the students' thoughts to see if there was anything new about us, but there never was. The human girl had kept her promise, and always stuck with the same story when people continuously asked her about it. Soon everyone got tired of listening, and they dropped the subject entirely. I still knew that he was not strong enough to stay away from her. He was trying to prove me wrong, and at times he had my visions all blurred up and blank. But as the days went on, it would slowly set itself back into place. It was becoming harder and harder for him to resist her, and this made my visions even more solid as the days passed. I knew for a fact that he would not kill her. His only option was to fall in love with her, from how I saw things. He tried avoiding her and ignoring her, but he was always listening for things about her. One Tuesday in March, my siblings, husband, and I were sitting at our normal lunch table when a short vision flashed before my eyes. "Bella is going to stare at Edward in a moment. Look normal," I announced in a quiet voice. We all fidgeted and shifted our weight briefly, as her eyes met with the table and then locked on Edward's form. She looked at him a lot, and I knew that deep down inside my brother that it pleased him, even comforted him at times. "I wish," I thought, as an audible sigh escaped my lips. "Stay out of it, Alice. It's not going to happen," Edward said under his breath. I pouted and turned away from Edward's direction, looking instead at Jasper. He was looking at me with an amused smile on his face. "I'll admit that you're better than I thought. You've got the future all snarled up and senseless again. I hope you're happy," I thought, as I turned and made an annoyed expression at him. "It makes plenty of sense to me," he said. I snorted and turned my gaze back to Jasper. I continued my rant in my head, but he was clearly ignoring me. A calm wave soon settled over me, and I looked into Jasper's eyes. The few moments that our eyes met, I understood. I sighed and cleared my thoughts of the girl, and left Edward alone like he wanted. The bell soon rang, and we all stood up silently and walked out of the lunchroom. Jasper's hand slid into mine easily as he walked with me to the history wing. As we walked, we talked absent-mindedly about various topics, and soon reached the building. Unlike the teenage couples that gave each other a parting kiss before going to class, or pulling each other in for a sweet hug, Jasper released my hand and whispered, barely moving his lips, "See you soon, love," and walked off to the mathematics wing, not far from here. I smiled and walked into class, taking my seat in the back of the classroom. I sat next to Lauren, a very obnoxious teenage girl that sat with Jessica and the others during lunch. Isabella had talked to her occasionally, but knew that this girl was not much of a friend. I never talked to her unless I had to, class projects and such, and she never talked to me. Class started, and Mr. Pitt started off with a lecture on the Great Depression. I ignored this and looked into the future the entire class period. I flipped through continuous visions until I found the one that really caught my attention. Edward was about to talk to the human girl, not saying much, but it was a start. I saw the future flash again, and the future that I was longing for him was set back into place. I sighed and smiled to myself. That vision made my day, and helped me through the rest of history class. The bell rang, and I walked to my lecture class at my own pace, taking the longer, outside path instead of the crowded hallways. My throat was starting to get a stronger burning sensation as the days went on, and I knew that I needed to hunt tomorrow by the latest. I hadn't hunted in over 2 weeks now, skipping the last hunting trip because I had gone the day before with Edward. My last class blurred by, and I walked briskly to the car. Jasper joined me, putting his hand in mine. We walked to the car, and our expressions changed to curiosity as we both saw Edward rocking with laughter in the driver's seat. Emmett and Rosalie came up beside us after a moment and had the same looks on their faces. We were so used to seeing Edward unhappy and angry, but now he was acting normal-ish. He had a little more life in him, which was very good. "Stop being an idiot, if you can," Rosalie growled in an angry mood as we all got into the car. Edward chuckled for a little longer and then pulled out of the parking lot at top speed. "So do I get to talk to Bella now?" I asked suddenly, with a smile growing on my face. "No," he snapped with acid. "Not fair. What am I waiting for?" "I haven't decided anything yet, Alice." "Whatever, Edward," I said angrily. I turned my head away from him and looked out of the window. "What is the point in meeting her if I'm just going to kill her?" he asked in a low voice. "You have a point," I admitted, and our conversation ended. Edward turned onto the driveway and stopped the car feet from the house, throwing open the door. "Have a nice run," Rosalie said with a smirk as he ran off into the trees. I sighed and ignored her as I walked into the house. Esme was there with a puzzled expression. "Where did he go?" she asked. "Hunting," I answered without interest. "He feels like he overdid it today," I continued. She nodded and turned to Rosalie, who was silently fuming. I just shook my head at her as her gaze landed back on mine with confusion. I walked up the stairs quickly and into my room, with Jasper following close behind me. I shut the door and smiled. "Edward is starting to give in," I said to him in a low whisper. The smile on Jasper's face was grim. He wasn't excited like me. "Do you know which path he is going to take?" he asked me. I shrugged. "No, it's just the same two options in his future. I can't see any farther," I told him. Jasper was trying to be happy for my sake. "Can you try to act happy for him? He is falling in love with this human girl. We have to be supportive of him," I whispered as I looked up at him. I knew he did not know what to think of this, so I went on. "He has been alone for over a century now. He needs to find someone special, Jazz. It has to be so hard for him to live with 3 perfect sets, the only one in his family that was not completely happy. He deserves a soulmate," I said, as I lay my head on his chest, peeking up at his facial expression. "He deserves something similar to what we have," I whispered. We both knew that I was somewhat over-exaggerating when I said this. We had never found a couple that had a relationship close enough to ours. Esme and Carlisle were somewhat like us, but not really, though. Jasper's eyes softened, and he looked down at me to lock eyes with mine. "I still don't agree with this," he said doubtfully. "Jasper, trust me. Everything will work out in the end," I said. He nodded slightly. "All right, Alice," he murmured as he placed his hand on my cheek. I smiled up at him, and he picked me up gently. His arms wound around me, and in the next moment we were on the bed in the center of our room. His hands tightened around me, and he held me close to him. We lay there in each other's embrace for a while. We talked on lighter topics, ones that wouldn't become stressful or require too much thinking. My eyes were locked in his perfect golden gaze as we remained there. I always got lost in his golden eyes. It has been over 50 years, and they still have the same effect on me, never getting old. It's always like I'm in some kind of trance when I look into them, but at the same time, I feel the warmth and the protection that they silently show only for me. He was a whole different person when we were alone. He could just let his emotions be free, knowing that I would never be bothered by how they affect me. I loved that we could be private about us. It made what we had feel more special. Emmett and Rosalie were very upfront about their physical love, not really caring who was around when they decided to have one of their moments. Esme and Carlisle were more discreet about their physical love, only occasionally showing affection when others were around. Jasper and I, on the other hand, were very different. We never felt like it was necessary to show our love like that. We always knew it was there. With Jasper's emotional ability, I could always feel the love that he was ejecting toward me at all time. And he knew that I loved him, since he could pick up on my own emotions. We would just hold hands or have our arms around each other when others were around, and that was really it. Our own family rarely saw us kiss the other around them. When they did, it always felt like they were intruding on a private moment between the two of us. We were never teased about our physical love by Emmett and Rosalie, although I sometimes pitied Esme and Carlisle because they received it instead. I felt Jasper's arms tighten around me once more. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "Just letting my mind wander," I breathed, as I pulled a strand of his hair away from his face. "And that would be?" he asked with a small smile. "You," I murmured. I felt his hand run down my arm, and my body shivered as I felt the electricity that his hand triggered in my marble skin. Then I was pulled away into a vision that lasted only half a second, but Jasper knew. "What did you see?" he asked gently. "Edward. He's going to the girl's house to watch her sleep," I said. "That was odd. Why would he do that?" "Only Edward," he muttered. "Yes, only Edward," I said, as I placed a light kiss on his cheek. "Everything will be fine," I reassured him. He ruffled my hair softly, but as he spoke, there was a catch in his voice. "I hope you're right,"